What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Happy 4th of July. Probably my favorite holiday, along with New Year's Day. Just celebrating this great country, enjoying the whole weekend. I'll be watching Heat Summer League tomorrow, lying about some Europeans. So that's always a fun time of the year. But obviously just about celebrating, this land and just being proud, man. So a fun day spent with the family. I'm here in the Keys, but we don't take days off here at CanesInSight. So we're gonna be talking about Jasen Lopez, potential flip candidate already, talking like that. The wide receiver from Chaminade. Also, just general team buzz, man. We've been talking to a lot of team sources, and I want to just kind of consolidate things we're hearing about the team from the summer with Pete as we gear up for the season. Plus, we'll take your questions, all that kind of stuff and more. First, I want to talk about some folks that you want to celebrate your independence from bad lawyers, from tough situation. You talk to Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
D, good morning.
Yeah, man, feeling great. Look, it's the apple pie, hot dogs, fireworks, and CanesInSight Daily here on the chat.
Yeah, there's not many things more American than talking about a potential decommitment from Florida State. So excited to get to that.
I'm sure Florida State's feeling great about their big win. That they're already playing defense on everybody within 2 minutes, 2 minutes of the post going up. So. That's going on. And as others, other people are kind of like, hey, man, recruiting's been fun, but let's get ready for the season. So I want to talk also about just the team, just the different position groups, and not even going in depth. We'll do that over the course of the month here as we gear up for the season, but just kind of little bits and pieces we've heard from team sources. I know you've been talking to people as well. So I want to kind of go over those sort of things and just compile the buzz and see what's going on here with the Canes. But first, Pete, why don't you pull up the story on Jasen Lopez, the wide receiver from Chaminade? One of our favorite players, right? We were very bummed to see this one go sideways when he committed to Florida State. And our info was kind of, hey, did he feel the love from Miami's basketball side like he did from Florida State's basketball side? Did Vance Spafford kind of shake things up with him? And when you read the story, I don't think he didn't really talk about the Spafford part, but the basketball part, he seems to sort of allude to that.
Yeah, we were texting yesterday. I had said from the start that basketball was important. Obviously, he came on campus. If he didn't receive an offer in basketball, Miami was not going to even be in consideration. But this guy wants to play legitimate minutes at the next level. I don't know what the Florida State basketball conversation was like. I'm not privy to know how much so look, maybe they had a plan similar to Miami's where football was most likely going to be the main focus. He would have a spot on the roster. I don't know what it was there, but I know from Miami's perspective, I don't think that the basketball program was looking at him as a guy that was going to be a consistent minutes grabber, especially at the position that he plays, D. And we talked about this, Jay Lucas being a point guard, very picky and particular about what he's looking for at that position. We both think he can play at Miami and basketball-wise and probably have some sort of role, but it was a big part of his decision-making process, right? So that goes into it. I think the quote that we're looking at here that's interesting, right? Because most of the time when guys commit, it's everything's great. We just locked it in. I'm solid. This does not sound like that. This is a quote from him was, "This isn't me shutting down my recruitment. It's just me committed to a school verbally." So really downplaying the commitment. And we understand that's what these commitments are. They're verbal commitments, right? I give the kid props for being upfront with it. But we also hear commitments these days when they pull the trigger. It seems to sound a little bit more upbeat than that.
Yeah, I mean, the full article here, he's talking about, let's see, I'm not going to shut it down. I'm going to stay in contact with other coaches. So, yeah. And then he says, this isn't me shutting down my recruitment. It's just me committed to a school verbally. So, yeah, flimsy. And as we know, FSU, is 98% sure that they're going to struggle passing the ball. This is a wide receiver. And probably 90% sure they're going to be a bad team. So, we'll see how this one goes. But just
Calvin,
go ahead.
Calvin says, I think y'all want him more than the fans do. I'd rather have Russell or Keys for real. The good thing is that it doesn't matter what we think, and it doesn't matter who we want, and it doesn't matter who the fans want. This is a player that Miami staff really, liked and likes a lot, and I don't think it's going to be over with here. There are going to be factors that, as we've just discussed here, that'll be something to overcome in the process, but they're different types of receivers. I don't see why they can't land a Keys, a Spafford, and Lopez.
Well, yeah, look, we want Keys and Russell too.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about Keys. We interviewed him for like an hour in person. We talked about Russell. I did a show with his 7-on-7 coach a couple of days ago. You could check that one out. So yeah, I want all those guys. If I were to stack them, I would say Keys to me is the best prospect. I would say with Russell and Lopez, I think Lopez is the better player right now. I would say Russell, if he gets a little stronger, has the higher upside, be like an NFL type player. So that's basically how if I were to break those three down, I could be wrong, but that's how I would stack them, with Keys clear number one, and then Russell more potential than Lopez, just getting stronger mainly. And then Lopez, if I had to pick someone to win a game right now, and before their senior years, I think Lopez is probably a better football player right now. But again, I think upside wise, Calvin Russell would have more because of his speed. That'd be the way I'd look at that one.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Pete, I want to talk about some commitments going down here because 4th of July, a lot of commitments scheduled. Not a ton for the Canes, but at least one I want to talk about. There you see the commitments. Felix Ojo is a 5-star tackle. Some people think he's the best tackle in the country over Cantwell. I don't, but I think 247 has him as the number one tackle. He's trending towards Texas Tech, the Matador Collective, your favorite collective besides Canes Connection. The one that the Canes fans got to focus on there is Nolan Wilson, the defensive lineman, really defensive tackle probably, from Picayune, Mississippi. Alabama's the heavy favorite, and I would be my pick. But I will say, and this is new information, Miami was in contact with Wilson and his family extensively yesterday. I know that for a fact. So they're still working. They're going to make, at a minimum, they're going to make it hard on Alabama. If he does ultimately go to Alabama, they're going to make him work. They're going to make him pay. They're going to make him sweat. So we'll see if Miami can get that one done. I would say my pick would still be Alabama for Nolan Wilson, but I'm not going to tell you that's done or Miami's given up, because they haven't. And if he does pick Alabama, which again would be my prediction, he would have made Alabama work, raise their price, all that kind of stuff, because Miami really likes Nolan Wilson and wants to get him in the class.
Yeah, I as of a couple nights ago, that one I as you're saying here, that one definitely wasn't happening. But I know that with like Devin Jackson, for example, who committed to Oregon yesterday, and we had said that one wasn't going Miami's way, that there was not really much communication going on there down to the last day. So the fact that Wilson at least is keeping it open is interesting.
Raising a Cane, appreciate your service. U.S. Navy, 1998 to 2007. I appreciate you, man. All you do. Nice hat with the U and the flag. Look at that. So the question from Brandon, are we going 0-4 this next week? I don't think so. There is a little bit of, again, momentum drop. Like a week ago, you won every battle, basically. This one's not going to be like that. I do think you'll take more losses, you take wins. I don't see us going 0-4. I remember before signing day, this last signing day, I was telling you I think we're going to lose everybody, and it was the least momentum I have heard going into the day. And we lost a lot, but we did ultimately flip Kellen Wiley which wasn't on people's radar. I think most people had him headed to Texas at that time, which is the #1 class in the country for that cycle. So I would say, there's always kind of one that you make a late push, and maybe if you lose on one, you focus extra on the other financially. These kind of things happen. So I don't think I wouldn't be surprised if we win one, that maybe we were crystal balled elsewhere. The player was crystal balled elsewhere, whether it's Nolan Wilson. Again, I think Alabama, but I could, wouldn't be is possible. Blake Stewart, I know, is one that's even crystal ball to Clemson. Miami really, really, really wants to get Blake Stewart. You saw Devin Jackson, the safety, commit to Oregon yesterday. So that would be the one.
If you lose Stewart too, man, this is it's a dire situation there.
Yeah, I mean, Will Harris, he brought him in for his coaching, but also, his recruiting. So he's got to get something in the boat. I think cornerback, especially if you can flip Brody Jennings, which is not a sure thing, you're looking pretty good at corner. So it's really more about the safety position that you got to get done.
Agreed. I think safety and DT are the spots right now that if you don't land one of these guys at D tackle, which is it's becoming increasingly less likely that you don't land one of these 5-star type blue chip guys, that you're kind of going to be seeing some new names pop up there.
Yeah. And look, at DT, I will say, you have Anthony Kennedy committed, who's a 4-star on 247. Actually, it's 4-star on 3. So the two biggest recruiting services, you have Anthony Kennedy as a 4-star. You have Tyson Bacon, who the other services have as a 4-star. I think 247 has him as a 3. Although they've been talking, you heard Cooper Patagna saying, who runs that region for 247, the coaches were calling him, like for other schools, saying, hey, you got to get Tyson Bacon's rating up. He's too low. So, probably I would not be shocked if by the end of this cycle, with those two, you have 2 composite 4-star players. I mean, they have 4-star ratings right now with different services. So that's not a bad place to start, or at least to be halfway there or 2/3 of the way there. But yeah, you do want that sizzle on top, whether it's a Nolan Wilson, Lamar Brown down the road, probably more so than right now. Bryce Perry right. I don't know. I think that will probably be solid if he goes to Texas A&M. James Johnson, who's local. You flip one of those guys to add to a floor that's already higher than, it's not like you have no defensive tackles committed. I think that's something that you can get done, but we'll see. That's going to take a while. Remember,
Johnson will be a tough one to flip.
Yeah, but remember, we saw Armando Blunt. We saw Hayden Lowe. We saw Justin Scott. All 3 of those guys who were 5-star players, all over 260 pounds. Say they're defensive ends, defensive tackles. I mean, they're big guys, 5-star players. They all flipped later in the process. Blunt flipped before signing day. Lowe flipped before signing day. And then Scott flipped in November. So November, December, I believe, for those commits. So that's pretty good. So Pete, let's talk about the team, man, because I know, you have been talking to people around the program for a while, just about different positions. And I want to just compile, it's not going to be comprehensive. We'll do all that stuff as we get ready for the season. Just kind of more like little pieces of buzz that we're hearing on these different positions. So, I'll start at quarterback. I mean, we've talked about Beck. The phrase I heard was he looks like, a guy that was projected first overall, which he was. I think specifically on Beck, the thing I have heard is the ability to change speed on his throws and to drive the ball when it's time to drive the ball, layer the ball when it's time to layer the ball, and, throw accurately short as well. So it's really the full arsenal of pitches. If he's a pitcher, it's a starting pitcher. It's not a reliever. He's not just throwing the fastball. Remember Kyle Wright kind of can only throw one speed, one trajectory, and that hurt his passing, even though he had a good arm. Beck, what he's showing, obviously Cam Ward had this as well, but what they're seeing from Beck in warm-up or in workout specifically is his ability to change speeds on his throws. So that's one thing, at least at the quarterback position, that I was getting from the offseason workouts.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to add there. I think that there's also, the other thing I would say is that there's excitement about how Luke Nickel finished spring, because it was not a smooth spring for him, I would say, up until the last couple weeks there, where he really turned it on, right, D? I mean, you would agree with that. So I think that seeing what he can build on there behind Ward is something that people were excited about. I mean, behind Beck.
Yeah. So in terms of Luke Nickel, I think the biggest reason why he did better at the end than at the beginning was because he played more with the better players. So when he first came in, he was with the fourth team, the walk-ons, and he was throwing picks. He was still trying to play aggressive, which to me is actually a positive, as opposed to just being shell-shocked and taking sacks. He was trying to make plays. They had walk-on receivers, walk-on offensive line. The timing was all screwed up. We had some good guys on defensive line that he was going against, even though you were getting deeper into the depth chart. He was going against 4-star guys. So that was hurting him down the road, down the beginning. He was throwing picks. As you got to better players, Emery got hurt, nothing serious. He missed a few practices. I think he missed like a week. Then you saw Nickel playing with the first team. You saw him playing with the second team. And that's when you saw him make strides. And I think part of that is just he learned what he can get away with and what he can. He still pushed the envelope, but he also had better players. I think as he threw to better players, you saw his talent improve. So like, I think his talent's continuing to show, his confidence is continuing to build. And I personally would like to see him get more second team reps, but I do know from hearing from the people in the building that they actively sought to bring back Emery and they were happy to get him back. So I think Emery really has the inside track by a mile to be the backup quarterback, even with Luke Nickel showing more signs at the end of spring.
Yep.
All right. So then at running back, the impression I'm getting is they're going to run the ball a lot. I mean, we talked about Marty Brown yesterday. You did the work. And I think I talked to someone about the running back room yesterday and confirm what you said about Marty Brown, that he's just looking good. And the idea being we're going to just pound these guys a lot. Not that we're going to take the ball out of Beck's hands, because Beck is not like an Emery was, at least the times that Emery started, where you're really protecting him. You don't want to protect Beck, but they think that they have because they have three backs with size, as they did last year, they're going to really, really hand him the ball and hand these guys the ball and ride all three of them quite a bit. I asked about the fullback. Like, can we see fullback with Lofton, maybe with Fletcher at fullback? They said yes. We'll see in camp how it looks. But I get the sense that they know they got good backs, not only just good backs, but backs with size, and they're gonna run them hard.
Yeah, I pretty much, I would say what I mentioned yesterday about Marty Brown, his early emergence. The pads aren't on yet. They're not practicing yet, but just weight room workout stuff. Kind of echoing what you said. I expect this to be, as AJ Allen had 54 carries last year, I think that third back will end up having closer to 100. I think it'll be just more carries in general, because they'll run the ball more, and understanding the quality of what you have there with whoever is going to be the third back.
Yeah, and remember, that was a depth we had last year, because AJ Allen was really our fourth back last year, because we had Martinez, Fletcher, and Lyle, and then Allen. So, we do have to replace those Martinez carries. I think Fletcher and Lyle will take a lot of those, but I think Marty is going to play a big role, and really more experience than Lyle was last year, right? He just had 1,000-yard season. He was freshman of the year last year. So he's coming in at a higher place than where Lyle, I mean, he's a third-year player, second-year got player on the field because he redshirted his first year. So he's got he's got a lot of experience there. I think that's going to play a big role. I asked about Jared Pringle. The idea is, yeah, they're going to, the way he finished spring, they're going to keep trying to give him some touches, because he finished spring he was injured, but he finished spring so well in the spring game. The idea was they're going to see what he's got there in camp to see if he can play a role early, because as Lyle has explosiveness, Fletcher and Brown more pounders, but Pringle has to the house explosiveness, and that is something that is missing from the team.
Rich Dub says, so basically back to this conservative offense with Mario holding the passing game back. I don't know that the offense has ever been conservative while he's been at Miami.
Yeah, we've been. So this is a myth I want to address here because I've heard this before and it's just not true. I've seen on Twitter. It's Mario's not had a conservative. Well, let's say it this way: conservative is a subjective term. Mario's never had a run dominant offense at Miami ever. Like that's just not happening. So let me just go to. I'm pulling up a stat here called passing play percentage, which is, as you guess, it's the percentage of your plays that are passes versus runs. So the higher you are in this stat, the more run, the more you pass, right? And the less you run. So Miami in passing play percentage in 2022, let's look it up. They were 36th in the country. So they passed 53.20% of the time. So I'll flip it to rushing percentage because that might be easier to understand. So rushing play percentage that same year, let's see, 2022. Someone that's good at math would probably be able to do this very easily. But yeah, 2022, Miami in rush play percentage was 96th in the country. So they were the 96th running team, not even in terms of yards, just in terms of attempts. Okay. Next year, 2023, this was the TVD year where all he did was throw picks. We had Henry Parrish, we had Chaney, and all those guys. Rushing play percentage, 88th in the country. Okay, last year, where we had the best offense in the country. Of course, we had the first overall pick quarterback, but we also had a good running game. Rushing play percentage, 112th in the country. 112th. And just to show you how good we were running the ball last year, we were 112th in rushing play percentage, but we were 27th in rushing yards per game and 5th in yards per carry. So we ran the ball great last year. We just threw a ton because we had Cam Ward. So we've really never been a running team under Mario at all. It's more about keeping this run game efficient and using it to wear guys down when the time is right, right? So last year we were 112th in rushing play percentage, but we had such power and we had such a physical style that by the end of the game, those guys were sucking gas.
You've made Rich Dub a believer. He said, "Dang, stats don't lie. Pre-Cam, it felt conservative. Guess it really wasn't."
And look, I honestly, I'll tell you, man, because I don't want to jump on you. You just have to comment. I mean, a million people said the same thing. I honestly thought it was more too until I looked at the stats. This was in 2022. I was like, man, we really didn't run the ball that much. And I looked at the stats, like, wow. And then it just continued, right? Yeah, that was before because I remember Gaddis. My perception was, Gaddis going to run the ball, but he really didn't. And then, with Dawson, he's a guy that likes to throw the ball, obviously. So, we'll see.
Speaking about throwing the ball, you got to have guys to catch the ball, and that's I think probably a lot of people's biggest concern offensively, right, heading into the season, because there's the lack of production. And I've heard a lot of Malachi Tony buzz. We've talked about him a lot this offseason, but I'll say, based on the conversations that I had a few days ago, I do think there's more confidence in the building, and people say, of course there is, but I think there's more confidence in the building about that group than the outside perspective. I'm not saying that's the same thing at other spots, right? But I think about receiver. They really believe in that group. CJ Daniels, the way that he's coming along, really getting healthy. JoJo Trader, as we understand, taking that step, getting healthy from last season, getting his weight where it needs to be. And then you're going to have some young guys in the mix there. And I've said this before, there was not a whole lot of returning production outside of Restrepo last year coming into the season. Compared to what there is this year, especially if you look at what a guy like CJ Daniels did elsewhere.
100%. And on CJ Daniels, I was talking to someone about him yesterday, and the thing I got with him, on top of that, he looks healthy, is last year, we didn't really have somebody who worked a lot with the young guys. We had guys that were there for the right now. And look, we had the best passing game in the country, so it worked out. But I mean, Restrepo is very much a guy that he's focused. He leads by example. He's focused on making sure he's in shape, that he's running the routes correctly, that he's working hard. He's not a guy that's going to be grabbing everybody to say, hey, this is how I do it. He's more focused on his performance. And obviously you saw what he did. Jacoby, he was one also kind of trying to focus on getting ready, getting right, and improving where he was weak. Sam Brown trying to go to the league. Horton kind of did his own thing too. It worked out. Those guys played great for the most part, and you had the number one passing offense in the country. With Daniels, he's much more on top of getting healthy and getting back to that form and liberty where he looked like an NFL guy. I think he's very much, he works with Luke Nickel at quarterback. He works with the younger receivers. He's like a captain kind of guy, which we haven't had at receiver probably since
KJ Osborne.
That's a good one.
Harley too.
Yeah.
Those guys are both that sort of player. Restrepo, really, too. I mean,
but Restrepo wasn't the guy. Like Restrepo was about, and I don't say this like in a negative way, because when I say he's about himself, you think it's like he's selfish. That's not what I'm saying. But Restrepo was like, I'm going to make sure I'm ready to play. I'm going to make sure I'm doing everything right.
I can't worry about what everyone else is on the team is doing. Right. If they're not motivated to get it right, then they're not ready.
Right. Just watch me if you want to see what's done. And he was a great leader that way. But he wasn't like the guy personality-wise that was just where CJ Daniels, that's just his personality, man. I think his dad's like a motivational speaker like he has a motivational kind of company. And interviewing Daniels, talking to his parents, just kind of learning more about him, talking to his dad, that's more of his personality. Blue mentioned two guys that I interviewed on Storm Sessions. Great interviews, both of those guys. Check them out at Storm Sessions. Like and subscribe. That's on Miami's official YouTube channel and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which I do through the University of Miami. It says CJ Daniels reminds him of Tanner Smith, the catcher. We just did an episode of Storm Sessions with him yesterday that dropped. So yes, very similar. They want to help other guys. We got a question from Peony Boys I wanted to get to, Peony Boys. We didn't forget you. Saying, am I crazy to think that Josh Moore can be better than JoJo Trader? So, Pete, I know you've talked to people about both these guys. From what I saw in spring, JoJo Trader, who's, again, a year older than Josh Moore, was the best guy in spring. However, Josh Moore had some – if you took his highlights were as good as anybody. And I think if you compare him to a JoJo Trader, the one concern I have about JoJo Trader is just that physical size and strength. Whereas with Josh Moore, man, he could go right now and play with no strength issues whatsoever.
Yeah, he was already bodying people up as a true freshman and early enrollee. So that is not the concern with him. I think with him, the word that I have heard is he's a flash player right now, which it's not a bad thing, right? You need flash players. I would love to see him in certain situations where you can just throw him the ball and he can go up and get it, right? And give you that, like you said, physical element at wide receiver. But I think JoJo can just do a little bit more right now in terms of his versatility and some of the routes he's able to run, right? And with Moore, I think midpoint later in the season, he'll become much more a part of the offense from a consistent standpoint than in the early part of the year.
Yep, I totally agree. A couple comments I want to get to. Your JR Bar saying Sam Brown stuffed at the one by Florida. Weak, dropped the ball crucial times, not clutch, never made a contested catch. No, I was disappointed with Sam Brown. I think Keelan Marion from BYU, who's even more physical than Brown, same kind of electric athleticism, maybe raw as a receiver, which Brown had some rawness to his game too. I think that'd be the comparison. Can Keelan Marion be better than Sam Brown? I think he can, but that's the pairing I'm watching just in terms of their role on the team. It's Austin Knowles saying, call me crazy, but I think CJ Daniels has a season like Charlton Rambo when he came. It's possible, man. I mean, different kinds of guys. This guy's he's more like a KJ Osborne, not exactly the same, but he's contested catches, big strength, mature. That's kind of what he reminds me of there. Corey Smith, man, appreciate you. Just want to take the time to say thank you. I bleed orange and green. I'm grateful for this platform because you guys bleed it as well. Appreciate you, man. Yeah, definitely. This is the easiest thing to do on a Friday morning, Saturday morning. This is what I want to do anyway. So you guys make it easy. CJ Daniels from Rod Vic posted a video working out with Tony, and he was like, they called this dude Baby Jesus. Yeah, he calls Luke Nickel, Luke Dimes. Like, he's got little nicknames for, Baby Jesus for Tony. That's been his nickname since he was a kid. But like, he interacts with the freshmen. Daniels does. He interacts with Beck. He's just kind of that leader, which I think this team really needed.
Yeah, I remember when he came back to practice for the first time at Miami. Late part, maybe like 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks left in spring practice. Kevin Beard was like, and that wasn't the first player who had returned from injury, right? And Kevin Beard was, because the media, we're there for the first like 15-20 minutes. Right, practice starts, and man, Beard was pumped up. You can see that he understands what having him in that room does for the energy and the mindset of a lot of. He's a tone setter, we'll say.
Yep, which was, again, that was needed, and that was stressed to me yesterday. So we talked about it before, but again, this was emphasized to me talking to people around the program yesterday. J.R. Barwell, the 2026 QB on the roster in 25. Who knows? We'll see the season. My prediction, no. If I'm the master of the universe and I'm picking how I want it to go, Beck goes number one pick or number one quarterback this year, and whoever the best quarterback is, just changing teams, says, well, I know where I want to go, and just keep it rolling, man. That's me. I mean, we haven't had a quarterback drafted past the 7th round since like Steve Walsh, or the 6th round, whatever Kaya got drafted. We haven't had a quarterback get picked anywhere close to high than Steve Walsh in the supplemental draft. And if you talk about the real draft, actually, sorry, Craig Erickson was a 4th round pick. So, I mean, that was like the high watermark, and that was in 1990, something like that. So it's been a while, man. And I think we had the number 1 overall pick. Obviously, if Beck is another 1st rounder, now you've had 2 1st round picks through this portal process, which you clearly struggled to get for 20, 30 years. Otherwise, 35 years. So I would lean towards what's been effective, but we'll see how Beck turns out. Jacob saying, if Marty Brown comes on strong, who will he be taking snaps from? I just think, you lost a lot of snaps with Martinez. So maybe those snaps that you would think would get distributed evenly between Fletcher and Lyle, he just takes more of those. It's more of a 3 versus a 2. But the reality is, Pete, and you know how this is, running backs get hurt, unfortunately. So I don't think it's gonna matter.
Yep. Agreed. So D, let's get to tight end, and then we'll go to offensive line. Tight end, there hasn't been something I would say that really sticks out in terms of like juicy bits of info, but I do think there was a lot more confidence in that group at the end of spring than when it first started. Especially getting Bauman back, and then the young guys starting to progress.
Oh, and you saw Ruskovich, who's a walk-on, but a big physical walk-on who plays. And I think, are they counting on like Ruskovich to replace Arroyo? No. But could Ruskovich do some of the things that McCormick did as he continues to get experience? Probably. So I think that's kind of how they're looking at that particular spot. And then, of course, Elijah Lofton, anyone you ask will tell you he's the best player on the team. I believe that as well. I get pushback from it, but again, if you talk to people around the program, they'll tell you the exact same thing. Just ask, who's the best player on the team? Is it Lofton? They'll say, yep. Appreciate you, Mondo. I know you're working hard always. On tight end, George Blissett had a comment, which is what I was going to say, which is, I know Brock Schott is a freshman, but I think he has a chance to make an impact this year. He's a beast. When like a week or so ago, I asked about freshmen that will make an impact, and one of those was Brock Schott. Brock Schott was a name that was mentioned specifically. I think, and seeing in spring, he used to work on his polish, route running, hands, just being more of a receiver at this level, because he was at a level in Indiana where he did everything and didn't have to be as polished. I don't think he was a big 7-on-7 guy and all that. But side, like strength, he's a shorter guy for a tight end. He's not short. He's 6'2", but strength and speed. His speed translated immediately. He can get down the field against Miami type secondary and the new Miami secondary, not the old one. So he's got real speed. He's like a receiver in that way. And I think that's going to help him make an impact. Johnny Lagoon says he's back. Work's been telling him to lay off the phone. Oh no. Well, hopefully keep the job. And
We hate to lose a live viewer like you, man.
seriously, man. But sorry for the we gotta. Good thing he's a pseudonym because they knew your name and they saw you on the show all over the place. You'd be really in trouble. Rich Stubbs saying, I read so much positivity about Heatherman's defense. I don't recall anything about his defense schematically. What kind of scheme will be running under him? I would say check out the pod we did with Lance Roffers, which really broke down kind of the X's and O's. Just write Heatherman CanesInSight. It should pop up. It's in our feed. Maybe it was like 2 weeks ago. But, some similarities to what Manny did, some similarities to what Georgia does. I think just in general, the big takeaway, expect to see less movement up front. Like we saw with Guidry, where guys were flying all over the place, less movement up front. And, you will see blitzes where maybe you rush 4, but somebody blitzes that you don't expect and then gets replaced elsewhere, whether a zone drop or whatever it is. So those are 2 big takeaways, but watch the podcast with Lance Roffers and you'll get more there.
I got to interrupt our flow of the show right now to show a tweet right here that we just got in the middle of the show about 10 minutes ago, sent to us. And I think that this is about as good as it gets right here from one of our listeners from @ball915 burner. Said, had a great trip to Miami this week. Thanks to @CanesInSight. It was even better with stops to @Miami Hurricane Team Store, @Mr. Canes legend, of course, Harry Rothwell there. And where else did he go? Islas Canarias Cuban Express. There you go.
Our guy BP, man, what a trip! What a trip that is. Make sure you retweet that one, Pete. That one's got to go up because that's a trifecta right there. You even got to meet the legend himself, Harry Rothwell. So let's talk about these guys, man, before we get even further because you got me excited. But yeah, man, the Miami Hurricane Team Store. That's Harry. When you talk about my Mr. Cane legend, you wonder why is his name Mr. Cane Legend? That's Harry Rothwell. He's the owner of All Canes, All Sports. If you remember, right there next to the light, that was always where people got their paraphernalia, all their cane stuff for years. I grew up going there as a kid. He has now moved across the street to the Hurricane Team Store. This is the official team store of Miami, so that's why he's there with Mr. Cane's legend, Harry Rothwell. You use promo code INSIGHT20, get 20% off your first item. That's in store or online at MiamiHTS.com. Look at all these new hats you got, all the stuff for the summer, Adidas, pets, shorts, jerseys, you name it. But again, if the Mr. Cane's Legends, the owner of the store, it should tell you how deep this runs. And this is all official with the school. And then Islas, man, again, we're not partnering. We have some partners and some potential partners that you'll be hearing about in football season that are sort of new operations that are getting going. But these right here, these are classics. Islas Canarias, Miami Hurricane Team Store, Harry Roth. These are all people that have been around for years. Islas Canarias, 40-plus years, established in 1977. That's when the first Star Wars came out, just for perspective. And it is the best Cuban restaurant in Miami. You saw they just won the New Times Best Cuban Restaurant Award. And I mean, you see the reviews. This is the #1 spot on the planet for Cuban food. And Islas Canarias Express in Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion takes all the classics from the old restaurants, which are still running, brings them right there to that central location in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion. 7 different types of croquetas, the sandwiches, Cuban food, you name it, like whether it's cuberitos, steak. These are huge portions, all the coffees, all the traditional juices. Islas Canarias Cuban Express. What is listener BP, man, my guy.
There you go. So let's finish out the offensive side of the ball here, D, with the O-line. Not a spot that we've had much concern with here the last few years, and I think really only just getting stronger. My biggest takeaway would be the health of the room, and I'm not talking about like the physical health of the players. I'm talking about there's a real understanding of, like, I think the tiers of where everyone's at, right? I think it's a room where you look at other positions and yes, there's one football to go around, a receiver everyone wants to play, there's rotations. But at O-line, there's an understanding of, okay, these are the guys who are starting, right? These are the guys who are battling for those extra snaps behind them. And then these are the young guys who kind of know that they need to wait their turn, right? But I think you have a really healthy understanding of cohesiveness within that room of, listen, I'm looking at this guy, how he's working, because I'm next in line. If I do everything I'm supposed to do, there's some guys who have been here for a few years who could have gone elsewhere and been starters probably elsewhere right now. And guys have stuck around. You've started to really build that development long-term that you're looking for here. So that would be my takeaway from the room in general.
Couldn't agree more. I asked about Jaden Wilkerson because you brought him up yesterday on the work, and I asked, someone different about that yesterday, and they confirmed. They go, "Yep, working hard, developing." To your point, that's a key word in that room. They think Mirabal is probably the best developer around, so there's confidence there. I would say Sampson and Kinsler, the fact that they stuck around, they've been working all summer. I think they're going to play a big role this year. I don't think they're necessarily going to start absent injuries, which we've been lucky on injuries on the offensive line, but there probably will be some movement there. But we'll see. But I think those guys are ready to play and they're not going to leave anywhere. So I'm fired
All
up.
right. So hold on a second. We used to have Riley Williams' grandfather in here. George Blissett says he is Brock Schott's grandfather.
He says he'll be better than Bowers, Juan. So look, I'll tell you this. First of all, like I said, we've been big Brock Schott fans since the beginning when he was getting recruited. I mean, how many times have we watched that video of him just playing defense, offense, special teams, all that? I think one thing that's nice is if you look at Beck, and this really applies to Lofton as well, probably Lofton more so because he's just older and has a bigger role right now because of that. Beck threw it to Bowers. He threw it to Lucky. What's the other guy? Delp. I mean, Georgia had like a ton of guys like that size, that style of play, and Beck threw to all of them. So Beck is very used to that kind of 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", speedy, quick tight end, and just feeding those guys. He did it all over the place at Georgia. It was a big part of their offense, both with Bowers and without Bowers. So I think that's something that Beck will be very, very comfortable with. Alex Bauman as well. Some more Brock Schott.
Jason Johnson says, hey guys, just catching up. Brock Schott is from my city, Fort Wayne, Indiana. He will be a beast. I didn't
know he was from a big city because the city he's listed as being from, is that a suburb? I need some Indiana knowledge here. So they list them being from a small town, or at least a town that I'd never heard of, Leo, Indiana, which I didn't realize that a suburb of Fort Wayne. Let's take a look here. Population 3,000. Yep, neighboring city. Okay, so it is next to Fort Wayne. All right, well, Fort Wayne's a pretty big city. Fort Wayne's not small. Fort Wayne, what is it? Almost 300,000 people. So Fort Wayne's a city. So that makes sense. Just north of Fort Wayne. Yeah, I was wondering how we got a guy from the middle of Indiana coming to Miami, but being a city guy makes a little more sense for the Canes. We got over 1,200 on. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel. Share this link if you can. We are on every day. Is 4th of July. We're out here doing our thing. So it doesn't really stop here. But yeah, man, shout out to the Schott family in the comments and the Blissett family.
So let's flip over to the defensive side of the ball. We'll start on the defensive line. Obviously, we talk edge. We can talk interior, but there's a lot of players who are going to be playing all over the line.
Yeah, so the buzz I've heard there is, I've heard Booker Pickett had a good offseason. You talked about Lightfoot and Lowe yesterday. Armando Blunt's a name that keeps coming up as being a key guy here on this line. Enrolled yet last year as a 17-year-old, played the whole year basically at 17. Now he's at 18, so he's basically a true freshman with a year of experience. What I've heard is he's a very nasty player. You throw the 3.8 GPA and all that stuff out the window when he's on the field. He plays like a goon, like borderline penalties. And then also that in this defense, he can play both the 3 technique and then the field defensive end, which is the defensive end to the far side of the field. So to the wide side of the field. So if you in a perfect world, Artavius Jones is going to seize that 4th defensive tackle spot because he's a true defensive tackle and you want him to just take that leap as a redshirt freshman. He made some big strides in spring. But I think in general, you're going to see Blunt more, he has a chance to take that role as well because he has that versatility. He's just going to play a lot on this team. I think I get the sense that Blunt is just going to be one of those key guys. You're going to see that number 18 on the field a lot this year.
I'm getting Chad Thomas vibes with him.
Yeah, I could see that. I think he's thicker bodied.
In terms of body type, I think it's pretty similar, though.
Yeah, Chad was not a skinny defensive end by any stretch. He was pretty strong. But I think Blunt's just a little thicker. The question is Blunt more a pass rusher or a run stopper? I mean, he was a pass rush machine at Central. I don't think he's like a super polished pass rusher at the moment, but he's very quick. He has great, suddenness. He ran a 4.8 verified when he was like a freshman. That's why he was one of the reasons why he was a 5-star player. But I think he's just a wrecking ball, man. He's twitchy, he plays hard, he plays fast, and he's physical. So he's just out there, I think, just to make a mess, man. I think that's the best way I could describe his game. Juan Manuel asking, can you explain that, D, the difference between those positions and Blunt? I don't think they're that different. It's basically you have the boundary defense. Let's say you're on one of the hashes, so you're close to the sideline. The boundary defensive end standing up. That's Messidor right now, but more traditionally, it's going to be like a Lightfoot, a Booker Pickett, the skinnier Malik Bryant, who I haven't talked about enough, who's going to play a lot. Those stand-up guys. Then you have like the 3 technique kind of defensive tackle, which is going to be like a Blunt, or I don't know. It could be any one of the guys we have, but probably let's just say Blunt. And you have a bigger defensive tackle, and then you have the bigger defensive end who is making sure that you're not getting wide on him because he has some size. So that would be your Hayden Lowe, your Ruben Bain, your Blunt, because there's more space to your side. You don't want a smaller guy that gets swallowed up, because now let's say you have like a Lightfoot there and he gets swallowed up by a big right tackle, and now you have this whole wide side of the field to run, whereas a bigger guy is going to mess that up a little more. So the 3 technique defensive tackle, which is your quicker one, and then your big defensive end, they're not that different in this defense. Lance Roffers really breaks this down in the video we did. So I reckon if anyone is interested in kind of the defensive scheme, just check that out. Just write Lance Roffers or Heatherman CanesInSight into YouTube, and it'll pop up. It's on our feed.
So linebacker, I think, is a spot that the new additions are probably as exciting as any in terms of the portal. And I think the fact that we haven't seen them yet because they weren't here for spring practice adds to the illusion a little bit. And from an athletic standpoint, people in the building are really, really excited about what these two bring to the defense. And that's Mohamed Toure from Rutgers, spoke about him yesterday. And a lot of people are excited about his return from injury, and then Kamal Bonner from NC State.
Yeah, I have some new information on Kamal Bonner, but I want to get one question here from Rich Dub, just about, wouldn't you want the speedier, more athletic DNs on the boundary side? Messidor doesn't fit that description, in my opinion. Yes, the first part. With Messidor, I mean, him and Bain are going to start. So Bain, I think, is just more of that powerful force that you want on the field side. Whereas Messidor, I agree, he's not perfect for that, but he did play linebacker in high school. He has experience standing up. He has that versatility. I think Malik Bryant, Lightfoot, Pickett are more long-term, what you expect to see at that spot. But to your point, Pete, about the linebackers, I know you have some stuff on Torrey, and you've been talking about him. I asked about Kamal Bonner yesterday and how he was doing. I heard very athletic, exactly what they thought so far on film. And he's someone that, there's people in the staff that are just very, very, they wanted this guy bad. This was like a targeted guy. Like, hey, is he a huge need? Not necessarily, but like, we just want this guy. We think in our system, this guy could be a great player. NC State, I remember I went to their message boards when he jumped in the portal, and they were saying he was their best player on defense. So, they were not happy to lose this guy. Obviously Miami was happy to get him. And I asked, how's he moving in workouts? What's the athletic kind of thing now that you're seeing him up close? You're seeing him next to your guys. How does he stack up? And it was so far so good. Seeing him pads, obviously, but they think Bonner is a potential impact guy for them at linebacker.
And then the defensive backfield here, I think that a year makes a world of difference in terms of their confidence level at those spots. I think corner for sure. You've got a nice depth in that room. A lot of different guys who can do different things. I do think there is still a little bit of skepticism about the safety position though, and the depth there. Right, that more so the depth. I think you're very excited about Poyser, Jacoby Thomas, what he brings from Tennessee, and that physical mentality that you've mentioned all offseason was needed. But you still have questions. These are guys coming in from different schools, right? Poyser being a guy who's taking a big leap up, physically, speed-wise, twitchiness. He seems like he has it, but not a whole lot of proven depth behind that right now.
Yeah, I asked about Jacoby Thomas yesterday, and the positive reviews, he's moving around pretty well. What I like about, so there's two things we needed at safety. I think we needed a dude, right? We needed somebody who's NFL caliber guy. With Poyser, he's who Georgia wanted to replace Malachi Starks. That was they have KJ Bolden at the other safety, who's a 5-star, who's going to be, freshman All-America. He's going to be a monster. The other freshman All-America last year on a lot of publications was Zechariah Poyser at Jacksonville State, which is lower FBS, G5. So Georgia wanted to take the other true freshman All-America to pair with their signed true freshman All-American KJ Bolden and replace Malachi Starks, who got drafted by the Ravens. We ended up winning that battle and bringing Zechariah Poyser to Miami. I say that all just to say like how good he is from a perspective standpoint, like how other teams viewed him. He can move, he can cover, he can play the ball, he can hit. He's very smart back there. We saw him in spring. Jacoby Thomas coming in later, so I haven't seen him yet, but got good reviews when I asked about him yesterday. But Poyser, I think, is a dude. What Thomas brings is something I've been screaming since last year that in my opinion, we needed. I could be wrong, but I said this last year before the season. I say it now. We just haven't had a guy who's out there just to hit somebody. And that's not, we don't have players that don't hit and aren't physical. But like, there's certain players that they are only there. Their first priority is hitting somebody. And they might get kicked out of games, but they're out there to hit. Amari Carter was like that. They're out there to get a highlight reel headshot. Corey Smith, appreciate you, man. Yeah, please like and subscribe. Got over 1,300 on. Like, we even had a guy like Nate Webster back in the day. It's like someone that when you see him on the field, you know that they're not going to be happy unless they hurt somebody.
You're wrong. You're wrong. It wasn't always very consistent, but Amari Carter was definitely in that category, I would say.
Oh, no, I was saying sense him.
Okay.
Yeah, sense him. We haven't had a guy like that. Like, I use him as an example of a guy that was like that. So we haven't had a guy like that in a while. And I think Jacoby Thomas is in that realm. I think he's more athletic than Amari Carter. Not like, is he going to be like an NFL guy like Zechariah Poyser, I think could be. I don't know. He's more athletic, I think, than Carter, but he's that kind of guy where he's trying to hurt like you said, like Amari Carter, trying to hurt somebody, trying to make the other team feel his presence. And I just think we've needed that. And I think Torrey has some of that as well, where he just has a certain intensity to the way he plays. And I think those two guys in particular at linebacker and safety are going to really change how the whole thing feels, because we just haven't had that presence, my opinion. But good reviews on Jacoby Thomas yesterday when I asked about him.
Yeah, I think there's to me the biggest question will be kind of like how they line up with all these guys who are versatile. We heard so much about, well, a guy like Damari Brown, he could play safety. Xavier Lucas, he has the length to play safety, but you also really like that length at corner if you could keep it there, if they can keep up with some of the smaller guys.
No question. Yeah, one of my Wells asked saying Lucas is cornerback one. Maybe when a free safety allows us to play all these other guys. I think Lucas going to the NFL. I mean, it reminds me of like a Tyson Campbell. Who else was like kind of like a Tyreek Stevenson? Yeah, we could talk about them playing safety, but ultimately I think their path is to the NFL pretty high, and they'll be good for us. Damari Brown. So I want to talk about Damari Brown. I'm so glad this was brought up. So Damari Brown, people don't realize we had to pay a lot of money to keep him. Teams were coming after Damari Brown extremely hard, and he was injured really while he was getting recruited. So we kind of took a leap of faith to say, we need you to stay. He comes back halfway through spring playing corner and was outstanding. He might have been our second best corner in spring behind Lucas, and Frederic was injured. But when Brown came back, I would say he was probably our second best corner just in spring. He's somebody that he could also, in my opinion, be a really, really nasty safety. He's a hitter. He could also play nickel. He's big. He's over 200 pounds. And I think with him, what he has to understand is not because he can't play corner that you want to move him to these other spots. It's going to help his NFL draft stock by helping the team because he can do more things. Not because he can't play corner. It's probably because he could be a better safety than other guys can be safety. And he can be better nickel than other guys can be nickel. So we'll see how that all plays out. But I think him staying obviously allows you to move him around more because you don't got to worry about keeping him happy. Being real. And I think he can do great. It's going to help his stock because he is very physical. He's a hitter. He does his thing. And that's what I like about his game. Jay's asking, how good is Xavier Lucas for Wisconsin to be crashing out the way they are with the lawsuit? I'm guessing he's elite. That's a pretty good context clue. Pete, you were there for to see him in person. To me, first round pick, Tyson Campbell, Stokes from Georgia, Tyreek Stevenson. Not saying he's exactly like any of those guys.
I'm not going to say surefire first round pick just yet.
Well, those guys were second rounders too. I'm saying in that class.
I'm not saying that yet, but I'm very excited about what he could be this year for this team.
Yeah, and look, they got to play. So
right, that's why I'm not jumping on that yet as a sophomore right now.
I've noticed that first impressions often are, when it comes to the physical stuff, are usually very accurate. Just going to practice in Green Tree. I think back to when I first saw Njoku, when I first saw Rousseau, when I first saw Clive Walford, guys like that. Stevenson, who was already pretty no commodity, but just in terms of guys we're talking about, DJ Ivey, who's now in the NFL and sticking around. Like those first impressions physically, you can tell who looks like they're going to play professionally. And I think with Lucas, your first impression of him was he moves well enough at corner that I don't think you have to move him. He's 200 plus pounds. He's 6'2", and he runs a 4.3, and he looks like he runs a 4.3, and he could find the football. So, put that all together with a serious personality, I think we're talking about the best traits that we've had at corner since the Tyreek Stevensons, since the DJ Ivies, but more so because this guy's a legit 4.3, since those kind of guys. But that's what I see there. Charisse Armistead saying this guy will be this will probably be one of the best seasons Miami's had in the last decade. Man, I hope you're right, Charisse. That'd be huge.
Brandon better than last year? I don't know.
That we need it on defense. Brandon Rosenbaum saying, what are we doing at safety? We're getting any top targets. We need a lot of help at safety. We need to recruit better there. Got to get some guys coming in. I think in terms of depth, our top two are going to be good because Zechariah Poyser will be a guy. I think you might need someone to move over if there's injuries. I mentioned Damari Brown as someone who has the ability to do it. And then Dylan Day is a favorite of ours, Pete. I know we've talked about him. Best special teams player we had last year. I think he could be a Sheldrick Redwine type player. Sheldrick Redwine being an NFL safety, 4th round pick, I believe, who played a few years and was really, really good as a junior and senior. I see some of those traits with a Dylan Day, someone that I know you've been high on every time you've seen him.
Yeah, I mean, it really wouldn't surprise me to see him end up starting next to Poyser when it's all said and done. I think that he has more upside maybe than Thomas in coverage. We understand what Thomas brings from a physical standpoint, but I think the speed that Day brings and his ability to cover ground could be really valuable. And he's got the physicality too. We saw him on special teams. It's not like this is a guy who isn't there to get his nose dirty.
100%. We're almost at 1,500. Like and subscribe to the show. Drew Linfield saying, feels like we haven't landed a solid safety since Ed Reed left. I don't know. Look.
We had a first-team All-American in Cam Kitchens. So
yeah, it was, Jaquan Johnson, I think, made All-America teams. Kenny Phillips was one of the best safeties we had in the country. He would have been a perennial Pro Bowler if he didn't get that arthritic knee. They used to call him Superman with the Giants because he was so good that when he got there.
That's what they said about me in my wellness center career.
Are you retired? Is your knee arthritic?
I mean, I've torn the ACL twice. I have another appointment on Monday for the same knee. You know, it's not too great these days, but I'm still jigging and moving, man. I can still get around a little bit.
The post game doesn't age. The skill that doesn't age.
Doesn't. I'm more concerned about my career on the pitch. That's gonna be a tough one with the running.
So you gotta stay in shape. Burstone saying, "Smash that like button. It's free. Appreciate you." Shout out to the villains. Shout out to you, Burstone, man. You're always bringing it here in the chat. Glad, man. It's exciting. A lot of excitement now. We got recruiting still to go, and I hope there's more commitment videos because that was fun doing one every day. And there's, I know the buzz has kind of gone the other way lately, but I like getting more focus on the team because I think bottom line, like Charisse is saying, we got to make the AC title game, got to make the playoff, and just got to make a step forward. If that happens, none of this else will matter, and it all will take care of itself. And if that doesn't happen, all the momentum we have now won't matter. So you got to get it done on the field. And I think talking to people around the program, there's a feeling that this is going to be the best team they've had since they've been there. They've said it every time, but they've been right every time. People are like, oh, well, they say that every year. Well, look, 22 was the first year, and they actually were concerned. 23, they thought would be better. They were, but not there yet. 24, they thought they'd be better. They were. Now they're thinking 25, they'll be better. So let's see if that would mean 11 wins, ACC championship, playoff appearance, that kind of stuff. So let's see if they can get it done.
That kind of stuff would be nice.
Yeah, man. So, I hope you guys enjoy your 4th of July. Just enjoy it with your family, celebrating this country, barbecues, all the stuff that you guys are going to be doing. We appreciate you spending the morning here with us. Remember to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. We'll be getting this thing up and running. Brandon asking, can you and Adrian do a trade deadline podcast when you go over who's traded into who? This is referring to my man Adrian Lorenzo, 2-time World Series champion, exec with the Boston Red Sox and Miami Marlins. That's L Big League Show, which if you're a baseball fan, check out EL Big League Show. Pete's 2 favorite descriptors, L and Big. L Big League Show, that's on YouTube. Just check it out. And Brandon's a very loyal viewer and commentator. But yeah, we'll definitely do something on the trade deadline and the draft, MLB draft. Drew Linfield working 9 to 9, man. Let's go. Happy 4th. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody, man. All the working people that listen to us while they're on the job. I know we got people working in offices, people working out the firehouse, people working and driving trucks, people working outside, inside, man. Appreciate everybody who's working, doing their thing for their family, for this country, and listen to the show. So appreciate you. Wishing everybody a happy 4th. Like and subscribe to the show. Go Canes.
Go Canes.